On episode 316 of the Tennis Files podcast, you'll learn how to develop a winning mentality with Coach Jack Schore. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the show. This is Mirban, and I hope you're doing well and improving your tennis game. I've been practicing a lot lately with my 5-0 men's team. We've got sectionals coming up in a few days from the date of when this recording will come out, so really excited about that. We'll be in the Richmond, Virginia area, specifically Ashland, playing against a couple different teams. So the winner goes to nationals. So we will see how it goes. But I have a great episode for you, in my humble opinion. This one is with Coach Jack Schore, who it was very cool that podcast guest Marco Impedulia on episode 311 of the show, he had introduced me to Jack at the City Open. And so we chatted and figured that Jack would make a great guest. Jack has a very storied tennis background. He has coached 5 players ranked in the top 50 in the world, including Grand Slam champions in doubles. Jack was inducted into the Mid-Atlantic Tennis Hall of Fame in 2000. He was also named the Washington Post Coach of the Year and Washingtonian Magazine Pro of the Year, as well as being a 3-time winner of the Montgomery County Tennis Association Tennis Coach of the Year. I'm actually on the MCTA board, which is a great place to be serving the tennis community for sure, and trying to bring a lot of individuals into our leagues. But in addition, Jack has coached and mentored thousands of young people in the Mid-Atlantic region over the last 30 years. He impressively, as the president of the Urban Leadership Development Group, and he is the president and founder at Jack Schore Tennis, as well as the CEO of Montgomery TennisPlex. But yes, on this episode, we talk about the top traits among the best players that Jack has coached and the key differences between the different levels of the game. Also, some really great tips on how club level tennis players can improve their games and reach the next level. Also, some great information about setting and achieving goals and much more. So with that, I really hope that you enjoy this discussion with Jack. And without further ado, here is my interview with Coach Jack Schore. Hey everyone, welcome to this special episode of the podcast. I have with me legendary coach Jack Schore. Jack, so great to see you on here. It was really nice meeting you at the City Open recently. And yeah, thanks for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. It's an honor for me to be here. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jack. Honor is mine. Really excited to talk to you. I mean, you have so many great accomplishments, as I read off in the interview earlier. So did read something interesting about you, and I think we might have talked about this at City Open. You have several horses. That sounds like a lot of work.
Well, not really. We have people take care of our horses, actually. But yeah, we did fox hunt. I moved down to a place called Rappahannock County many years ago, and my wife is a big fox hunter. So naturally, I had to join along. So, and I love the horses. Just love them.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I've always been a little bit hesitant to ride them for fear of falling off, but I'm sure it'd probably be fine. But
I fear it most of the time. I have a thoroughbred who just can really go, and he takes care of me.
Nice. That's good. You have that nice bond going there. So Jack, and again, in talking to you, you've just produced so many winners, whether it be, juniors, pro level, collegiate, teams, individuals and whatnot. So probably a tough question, maybe not for you, but what does it mean to be a winner?
Well, in tennis or sport, it's a very definitive thing. You either win the championship or you don't. You either come in second or you win the thing or you come in last. It's all spelled out. In life, it's a whole different ballgame. But I guess you're talking about tennis. For me, it was like I enjoyed winning with teams. I enjoyed winning with individuals. I enjoyed the difference in coaching those different situations. And things seem to have worked out. I mean, we won at a great level when I was at At the University of Maryland, I coached 1 year. We won more matches, had a big high percentage than any team ever had. When I was at Bullis School, we won more IAC championships, and we actually won the national championship twice. And I coached the Greek Junior Davis Cup team. It was the best year they ever had. So, it just seemed to have worked out.
What was the key to turning around University of Maryland program? Because obviously they sustained a lot of losses. And yeah, what did you do? What was it? Recruiting? Was it mentality? What was it?
Well, it was an interesting situation because I just came in there for 1 year. Actually, the coach had to leave, and she asked me, kind of begged me, please take over the team. And she was such a wonderful person. I did it. And when I inherited the team, I think they had 5 wins that year. And in the first practice, I brought in 2 of my players and gave them scholarships to Maryland. And they were used to my style of coaching. And everybody else was pretty much a senior. So I had these 2 freshmen, the rest were seniors. They all weighed, I'd say, a minimum of 30 pounds overweight. When I first walked on the court and the team came out, I was stunned. And after the first practice, at the University of Maryland, the track is right down below the tennis courts. And I said, okay, everybody run 4 miles. And they're packing their bags and they're laughing and having a good time and they're walking off. And I said, no, run 4 miles. We're going to do this every day. And the 2 players that I had walked up to the other players and they said, no, he's not kidding. Trust me, he's not kidding. And that day on, we ran 4 miles every single day until matches started. And I had to get them into playing condition. And they dropped the weight, and they were actually very good players, but they were tremendously out of condition. And we went on to win. Just a side story, in the middle of the season, I get a call from the athletic director. She calls me, and there's 2 of my players. And she said, they're complaining that you're working them too hard. And I said, girls, I'm not going to stop doing this. This is who I am. And let me ask you, are you winning? Yeah. Are you having a good time winning? Yeah. And that's it, girls. That's the way it goes. That's what we're doing. And we went on from there.
Wow. Yeah, you really found the issue and tackled it head on, and convinced the players what they needed.
I would have had to leave if they asked me to stop the practices where I wanted to.
Yeah. Big respect for that. So you've coached a lot of great players. What are the top 3 common traits among your top players, would you say?
I wrote down, and I gave you the list of common traits, and I gave it to 2 of my great players, one guy, Richie Ranenberg, who was a 2-time Grand Slam doubles champion, and Dan Goldie, who got to the quarters of Wimbledon, and they both said the same thing. The number 1 trait, if you can't get past that, then you should just forget about it. And the number 1 trait is coming, and this is just observation of mine. It's not a rote thing that you just read in most of these journals. Great players come to practice early, they leave late, and they get as much as they can, near 100% out of every practice. That's what they do. If you can't do that, then you can be very good, but you can't be great. And it's not a lot. Just because you do that doesn't mean you're going to be great. But you must do that to buy into the rest of it. I was wondering why Nadal and Djokovic and Federer, why did they dominate for so long? And clearly out there are great athletes, as good as them, and great strokers of the ball, who many of them hit harder than they do. But what I found was those 3 people making on-court decisions better than anybody else. They could change their game. They can vary their style. They can do it, and they would make the decision, and then they will follow it by doing it. And it would be the difference in winning and losing. It's a hair. It's not that much in many of those matches, but they were making the correct decisions all the time. So I thought that was one of the great things. There are several other things, but I think one of them is having a goal. And you see this so many times. You put that goal out there, and that's your goal. And whatever happens in between when you start to you finish, you're working your way to your goal. Whether you win every match for 5 matches in a row and you lose one, or you lose 5 matches in a row and you win one, it doesn't really matter because you're looking at that goal, and that's where you're going. And I think all of these people, all great champions, do that.
So some follow-ups, Jack. First off, you mentioned getting 100% out of practice. So how do you actually do that?
I think it's sort of built into you. Becoming a champion is sometimes it's just in the genes, and I think it's sort of, or you look around and you see the champions next to you practicing, and you go, okay, that's what I have to do. But it's a mindset, and I see what coming early and leaving late to me represents is that you really want to be there. That's your situation for the day. I had a great player. His name was Jeff Hirsch, who played 4 years at #1 at Duke, one of the top 5 players in the nation in the juniors. And he once said to me, I walk in to practice and I want to get the absolute most out of practice. When I walk out of practice, I want to get the absolute most out of my studies and and he would just balance both of them. But whatever he did, he wanted to get the most out of it. And I think that's many times innate. But what I also enjoyed was I would bring my great players back to my junior practices, and they would practice alongside the juniors. And so many of the juniors told me, okay, I get it now. I see what I have to do. Because these guys were, their example.
So Jack, in terms of the difference between coaching individuals and teams, I wanted to ask you kind of a similar sort of question for teams. So what are a few keys to develop a winning team?
Well, the first thing I ever do with every team I ever have, I bring them all together and I said, okay, nobody's going to agree with me except one person. And that's the guy playing #1. I would hope everybody here feels that they could play 1, or if they're playing 3, that they could play 2, or they should be moving up. However, when we set the lineup, you're going to have an ample chance to prove yourself. We'll have a lot of back and forth as far as you can challenge anybody. And after a period of time, we're setting the lineup. But everybody here will disagree with me. I understand that now. Let's go forward on it. And it's really an eye-opener for everybody. Because all the moaning and bitching and stuff like that, you always get on teams, and I like that. It's taken care of right away. And then there's the building of camaraderie between the players. And you want to do things off the court and on the court that build that kind of community. And once you can achieve a community, you really are going to pull more out of these people than they ever thought they were going to be able to do individually.
Yeah, and so I mean, I guess an easy follow-up for me at least is going to be, how do you build that community? Because I remember, when I played in college, UMBC, obviously sometimes it was maybe a little bit tense in terms of, you had the challenge matches. Somebody thought they should be playing, but they weren't. So, what are the keys to developing that community?
Well, that challenge matches thing I set up, and I let them know. Let's say we're going to have 2 matches a week. 2 days out of those other 3 days of practice or 4 days of practice, we'll have challenge matches. So you can go at each other. But you have to accept the fact that what is once we start to play another team. Because the next day, you can challenge again. And it was an interesting thing, particularly the team at Maryland. They thought that the challenge matches were much tougher than the actual matches they played because they so wanted to be in a better position. So it was kind of a relief to play another team. And then we would grab a pizza, we would go on the road, and you use those times to try to build community. You use those times to try and okay, so you're the #1 player, but there are other players who are excel at other things, and we talk about a lot of different situations, a lot of other facets of life, and try and get everybody involved in it. So it wasn't just who you are in the lineup that determined your seniority. It was you were accepted as a human being.
Yeah, it's a lot of great keys there. In terms of club level players, I was wondering because I know we
put one other thing in there.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I would let everybody know that it's the culmination of at the end of the day of how many points we've won. We don't get any more points for winning number 1 than we do for winning number 6. So everybody here should be pulling for everybody else because everybody is of value. The number 3 doubles team will eventually win a match for us. Everybody here, look around the room, and somebody here every single time is going to be on the line winning a match for us. And it's not going to be the number 1 player. It's going to be every one of you who will be on the line. So we all have to back each other.
Yeah, that's important. And then in terms of the bench players, how do you kind of build value for or show them their worth? Is it more like, you're practicing and helping the players improve around them?
Well, you're doing that, and you also have a chance to play. And I try and give our bench players, if we're playing someone who we know we're going to beat pretty handily, I try and get them in the matches so they can really feel match tough. They can really feel match situations. So when they're not playing against, some of our arch rivals, they know what the other players are feeling. And they know to get behind them because they liked it when the other players got behind them.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, Jack. So in terms of club level players at like the 3-5 to 5-0 level, I know we were chatting about this a bit when we were at City Open. So I'm curious, like what things did you observe? What stood out to you the most that you thought players, if they had just spent some time improving, that they would really be able to leapfrog a level or two?
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about that because I was driving past a municipal tennis stadium the other day. There were about a dozen courts, and I was looking out, and I would think very easily a 3-5 or 4-0 player could improve some of their techniques, and they would enjoy the game so much more. They would be a whole different level, serving, ground stroke techniques, maybe a little foot techniques, and just invest in that a little at a time. And it would be a vast improvement. You'd feel a whole different accomplishment in the game, and your levels would go up dramatically. And I've been able to do that with some people, where they came to me, 3-5 player, and we just did a couple of things over the course of a month, and it was just. Then they were out on their own, and they felt it was a whole different ballgame.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm curious, what are one or two of these particular things? I mean, maybe I'm going to guess it's a serve. I don't know, but like what's maybe like a change or two that you changed, and how do you do that?
You can teach someone of that level a better serve very easily, and then you can also very easily teach them shot selection and where to be at certain times. One of the great things is return to serve. You see, most 3-5 players will stay in the exact same position every single time to return. The easiest way to get into a point is through someone's second serve, because at the 3-5 level, once you see their second serve, that's what it's going to be the whole match. So that's the easiest ball to time. And you don't want to stand 5 feet behind the baseline because most 3-5s don't have a dominating second serve. So you get on the baseline or inside it, and you start to time it. And then you immediately get on the offense, and you're putting pressure on that person, and the whole game changes. It does in the pros also. You see it in the pros all the time. But it's easy in the 3-5, 4-0. Easy.
Yeah, no, that's great. And in terms of the mentality, because that's like a huge thing. We often get ourselves into these like third set, super tiebreakers and whatnot. And wondering what sort of advice you have for players on how to, put themselves in the best position to succeed. Any common pitfalls and what to do about them, etc.
Yeah, I think that once again it's shot selection, and I think that one of the great things that's set up in the game of tennis is to close. And the pressure that you have to close. The way I talk to my top players is it's like a bullfight and you have to kill the ball. You can't, there's no clock. You can't run out the clock, and you can't build up a certain amount of points so that at the end you can't be caught up to. In tennis, you have to the last. So there are various styles of games that each player has, and they know their strengths. And in those situations, you want to go to your strengths. And you want to have very good shot selection. You want to know when to use your strengths. What are your strengths? If your strength is to keep the ball in play. Okay, if your strength is that you are in great shape, use that. If your strength is your forehand, run around your backhand. Okay, show different positions on return of serve so that you haven't done before. Pull something unique out of the hat that the player hasn't seen before. That you know you can do. Don't do things that you aren't sure you can do. Go to the well and do to your strengths and maybe do something unique to show the other player so they have to think a little bit. And then you generally come out okay.
Gotcha, Jack. In terms of the just coming back to the serve, because I think about one of the biggest things in my game that I'm trying to work on. What do you think are maybe the one or two biggest issues that you've seen with players' serves that you've had to fix?
Well, I think most people think about hitting the ball. And what I like to do with people, if I was working with you on your serve, the first thing I would do is I get a basket of balls and I said, okay, throw 10 balls over the net. I would want you to realize that the serve is a throwing motion. Okay? It's like a quarterback throwing a football. It's like a baseball pitcher throwing a baseball. What you're doing is you're taking the racket, you're tossing that ball, and you're throwing the racket in a throwing motion at that ball. So, kinesthetically, what you want to do is you want to rotate into the ball with the center of your body. You don't want to hit the ball with your arm. I think most 3-5s, 4-0s hit the ball. They don't rotate into it. And you want to get that across. Once you do that, you liberate so much of the service motion. And you build up a lot of confidence in that player. Also, okay, where do you want to put the ball? It's pretty easy to put the ball wherever you want. If you get, well, let's go back a second. The other thing you want to work on is your toss. So you work with a person who's showing you how to toss from the shoulder, keeping everything else straight, getting it maybe 6 inches out in front, and then just rotate into it and let your hips and shoulders go exactly where you want that ball to go, and it'll go there. It's really not that tough.
Yeah, just more of when you've built all this muscle memory for years, it can be tough, but just takes a lot of dedication to.
It is, but once you get somebody throwing, and I've done this with a lot of older players, 3-5s. Once you get someone throwing and they feel it, then they really understand what they should be doing as far as the service motion, not hitting it but rotating into it. And and this I got it, because if you hit the ball, usually you're going to pull down. You know what I hate to hear is, and I hear so much from even on television, these guys, keep your chin up or you pull your shoulders down. Well, the reason you do that is because you didn't rotate your hips through. If you come from your upper body, you'll pull down naturally. You can't stop it. The only way you can stop it is by rotating through. So once you get someone to do that, then you say, okay, every time you hit the ball, serve into the net, you know exactly what happened. You didn't rotate your hit. So my goal for you is to never hit the ball, serve in the net twice in a row. Never do that, because you know how to fix it now. You have all the information on how to fix it, and most people do that.
Great stuff, Jack. In terms of what's that?
Take you out and we'll give it a try.
Oh yeah, please, I love that. Thank you, definitely. I need it. And in terms of college versus pro level, Jack, I mean, you've obviously coached levels and every level. What do you think are the biggest differentiators, between college game and pro game? Yeah,
the professional coaches really have to know the ins and outs of their player, what they can do, what they can't do. You're kind of limited, other than a junior coach. You're kind of limited because you can't change that player drastically you can over a period of time, but you can't change something because the player has to win. But in professional tennis, the player always feels they have to win. And they can't go through a period of, okay, I'm going to try this and we're going to modify my game. We're going to change this here and there. You have to do it within them still winning. So it's a very delicate situation in the professional ranks. And then the pro coach has to know players that they're playing against and be able to evaluate that. So it's a whole different thing. It's a whole it's much more of a tennis thing in coaching professionals than it is in coaching collegiate players. Collegiate players, if you can recruit and you get great players, you're going to do okay. Now, you can enhance those players. You can do really well and win a national championship, but you're going to do okay if you have just, a good bunch of players.
Yeah, definitely.
Junior coach is a whole different thing because you
mm-hmm.
can really mold a player. I mean, I think I could take almost anybody, a kid, and make him into a player. I'm not talking about a great player, but a high school player or collegiate player, I think I can do that with almost anybody.
Yeah, I definitely believe it. Just kind of going back to the whole, the goals, setting goals, achieving goals. I'm curious what types of goals you encourage your players to set, because obviously there's talk about, okay, how far out should we set goals, and what types, should they involve numbers, rankings, things like that. So what do you suggest, like when we're setting our goals in terms of those parameters?
Well, I always want them to set high goals. I mean, it's interesting because I've coached people who got to the quarterfinals and the singles in Wimbledon, and I've coached guys who won Grand Slams, so I know it's doable. And when I get a young kid, I'm coaching a 9-year-old boy now, and I always say to him, "Okay, when you're at Wimbledon, you got to make sure I'm in that box." And he looks at me, and I said, "Look, somebody has to do it. You can be that somebody." So it's plausible. It's a feasible thing for you to be able to get to Wimbledon. I've coached guys. Here, call this fellow up. He's been playing at Wimbledon. He played Wimbledon 6 years. Call him up and talk to him. Someone has to do it. Why not you?
Yeah. I'm wondering, just to be devil's advocate, just random thoughts here. Would it ever be a detriment to any sorts of people to set like too high of a goal? You know what I mean? Like, is it maybe somehow like, okay, if they set too high of a goal, they'll feel too much pressure or something like that. So they should set, medium. I don't know.
I think I never understood when like a number 4 player at a middle school, collegiate school, turned pro. Now, if you wanted to go for a year and have a good time, I travel, and I understood that. But what you need to take a look at is what level are you dominating? If you're dominating a certain level, okay, let's set the goal for the next level.
Okay.
But you need to dominate your level. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're kidding yourself. I mean, it's not realistic. So, and that's in any phase of life. You need to be able to dominate that level. If you're not in the Middle Atlantic, if you're not in the top 10 in the Middle Atlantic, your goal should not be to be in the top 10 in the nation. Okay, maybe I should be top 50 in the nation. That's a good goal. Okay, you get to be top 50 in the nation. Okay, then you can set your goals a little higher. Although with all my players, we never put a number on anything, even in the professional ranks. We always try to achieve the next thing you needed to grow your game. Never, okay, I'm 50 in the world now. By 6 months, I want to be 23 in the world. We never did that. Okay, what do I need to get better? I think that is much more of a plausible goal. It's much more something you can really do. And in that doing, you're going to be a better player, and your ranking should rise, and you should be moving along.
Yeah, definitely great stuff. Obviously want to touch upon, a lot of your accomplishments as well, Jack, in terms of, building up facilities around the area. So I guess maybe let's even start earlier than that. I'm curious, when did you first actually get into tennis? Like, how did that all come about?
I think so many things in life are luck. So I played on my high school team, and we were good, but I didn't know how good we were. And I went to my first year in college at Illinois Wesleyan University in Bloomington, Illinois, and my dorm was directly across the street from the tennis courts. So I always loved the game. So I went over to the wall every couple of days, and I hit on the wall there. And one day, I'm hitting on the wall, and this is how vivid it is. Don Guess shows up. He's the number 1 player on the team at Wesleyan. I hadn't tried out. And he was the president of the fraternity I was rushing. So Don and I knew each other. And I'm hitting, and luckily, his guy who was going to hit with didn't show up. Jack, you want to hit? Why? I'm going to hit with Don Guess. Yeah, sure. Don was 6'4", looked like a real tennis player. So we're hitting, and it's going pretty good. Hey, Jack, you want to play a set? Wow. I'm going to play a set with Don Guess. It gets to 4-all in the first, and he has to go to a fraternity meeting. He said, why didn't you go out for the team? I said, I just never dreamed, I'm going to make the team. But the next year I went out for the team, and I made the team, and I transferred to GW, and I made the team there. And it just kept on going. And once again, it was just straight luck. I was taking a vacation in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And I walked past the Caribe Hilton, the tennis courts there. And there was a chain link fence between there and, the courts and where we were walking through. And I'm watching this guy teach out of the corner of my eye, and I said, geez, this guy's really good. And for the next 3 days, my wife didn't love it, I guess, but I would show up and I'd stand behind the chain link fence and I'd watch him teach. And I adapted all his methods. And I didn't know it was Welby Van Horn, who probably is the father of the great coaches of today. And I just, glommed onto his methods. And it worked, and I put my own personality into it as we went along. So I would say it was 75% Welby and 25% me. And just by luck. And the guy was a great coach. And, my players really benefited from it.
That's super cool. And then obviously you built up Bullis, which is one of the most well-known facilities around the Mid-Atlantic area, if not nationwide. So tell us about how you developed Bullis.
Well, to me, I think of myself as a coach, not an entrepreneur. So what I always wanted to do was leave all the business situations to somebody else. So I figured if I build a facility and I hire a great manager, which I did in Vicky Datlow, then I would be free to do anything I wanted on the court. I could travel with my players. I could be on the court, period. And for 20 years or more, I would spend a minimum of 50 hours on the court. But I didn't have to worry about the business side of it because Vicky was a great manager. She took care of everything. I just showed up and could do whatever I wanted with my players. So the same thing at Montgomery TennisPlex, where I got Marco Impadaglia, who's a fabulous manager, and I can just do whatever. So that really liberated me to do my coaching. I could travel on the Pro Tour. I could travel with my juniors. I could be there 7 days a week, and I can get a court whenever I wanted if a player needed it because I owned the place. So it was just a great situation, and it worked out.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And then something that's super cool that you're very proud of is, the Urban Leadership Development Group that you're president of. So tell us about that.
Well, once again, it was luck. I was at a meeting, and one of my great friends, Kevin Dowdell, worked for Arthur Ashe. He was his finance person. And we had a meeting with the headmaster of Bullis and Arthur and Kevin and myself. And before anybody else got there, Arthur and I were sitting around. And we're talking. He was such a great guy. He wanted to know about you. So I said, well, Arthur, I grew up in the Bronx, but I own this tennis center now at Bullis. And I really want to do something for inner city kids because, I grew up in the inner city. And he helped me develop this urban leadership development group. And what we did was we took kids from the inner city who didn't necessarily have to be great players. They were good players, but they also had high academic values. And they were good citizens. And they were willing to travel. You think about this. From the inner city out to Potomac, Maryland, every single day, back and forth. which was an hour and a half each way, and stay with it. And we've got these player after player after player who saw the value in it, whose parents saw the value in it. And they would come to school, and at the end of their year, when they finished Bullis, they all got full scholarships. The last fella, Ronald Camden, got a full scholarship, got admitted to. So it was really a wonderful experience for everybody. I loved it because I was, fulfilling. I felt a need. And the one thing when they graduated that I demanded from them, it was I say demand, I asked them to do, and everybody, of course, did it. Was, okay, look at the chance you got. Your job is when you get situated and you're comfortable in your life to give back. Mm-hmm. And they all have. So it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it's got to be incredible.
It never came out of my professional career.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be unbelievably fulfilling. So just huge kudos to you and everybody who involved with that. So, and your students as well, obviously. A question for coaches. So Dick Gould, all-time best coach at Stanford University, very well known. He said Jack is probably one of the 2 or 3 best coaches in the country. So I just want to ask you, Jack, what makes a great coach for all those coaches listening?
Well, I think the first thing that you have to have in your mind is the player comes first. Your ego has got to be sublimated to the player. And whatever they need, whatever you feel they need, they come first. And I see that in all the great coaches. And I feel, I hate to say this, there's so many coaches who pound their chest with all the things that they've done. And it's the player that comes first, by far. And then you need to be able to learn how to get the trust of a player. You can't do anything unless your player trusts you. And then you need to have the goods. You need to be able to know the game, know the techniques, know the shot selections, know what your player can do and can't do. And that's a big thing because every player is different. So those are the things I think if you can do that, you're going to be a very good coach.
And so, some follow-ups. I mean, how do you make the player trust you? What sorts of things should coaches do to foster that?
You never tell them anything but the truth.
Mm.
Everybody who's, comes up to them, and I tell them this right away. I just had a conversation with my 9-year-old kid who's getting pretty good, and his father. So now that you're getting good, everybody's going to come up to you. They're going to tell you to do this, to do that. You really need to do this, try that, and that. Come back to me. Tell me what they've said. I don't know everything. Maybe they're right. Okay, we'll put it in, or maybe, talk to them about what they're talking about. We'll get together. But you need to let that person know you're open to them, your player. You need to listen to them. You need to take suggestions from them. You need to show them, okay, here's why I'm working with you on this forehand. I'm going to tell you exactly why. Ask me any question you want about it. Okay? And maybe if it's not right for you, we'll talk about it. And okay, we'll change it. We'll fix what I'm doing. But let's talk about it. Let's see why this is happening. Never, ever accept from me anything rote. I will never tell you anything, do this. We'll always go over it. We'll discuss it. I want you to understand why I'm telling you this. And don't think you have to do it. If it doesn't make sense to you right now, we'll do something else.
Nice, love it. And then the other thing you mentioned, you better be right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And then in terms of, you mentioned making the player come first. So I'm curious if you any advice on that or any examples of, how to exactly do that. I know probably that, the trust thing obviously comes into it.
I'm sorry. Well, if the player is going to be really good, it's an individual game, and they better have a pretty big ego, at least on the court. Off the court, I don't mind it either, but they better have a pretty big ego. And you can't put your ego ahead of them. You've got to let them know that they are your main focus. And, that's You're not going to, tell them what to do. It's a situation where we'll both get together. Sometimes you can, and then you have to know to walk away from it and come back another time to try and gain the confidence. Okay, they're not accepting what you're saying. Okay, don't force feed them. Don't push it on them. Walk back. And at some point, either they come to you and go, yeah, I see what you're saying, or you wait for that special time that you see, okay, I can talk to this player now. There's a vulnerability there, or there's a situation that's happening that you can talk to them now. And that you have to be patient as a coach to get to those situations.
Yeah, definitely, Jack. So this might be a tough one, but I guess in all your years of coaching, I'm curious, what is one piece of advice that stands out to you about tennis? It could be about the game for amateurs. It could be about coaching, anything. Just one piece of advice that, you carry with you pretty much every day that comes to mind that you've received from anybody.
One piece, huh?
Yeah, or,
You mentioned Dick Gould.
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned Dick Gould and his record. If viewers want to really see a record, I mean, this man was the ultimate winner in tennis. And his whole feeling was to be positive. 100% of the, no, I'd say 95% of the time, be positive with your players. And they'll respond to you in a very, very warm and understanding way. And he was incredible that way. And he told me, a lot of lessons of how to, deal with people and how to be extremely open with people, but be positive and pick out the best things about them before you work and criticize anything about anybody. And you don't really criticize, but tell them the good things that they're doing. And then you can open them up to taking advice. But I think Dick was really just incredible like that.
Yeah, legendary coach. Thanks for great advice, Sarah. Jack. So just want to let the viewers know about, what you're up to right now. Any ways that they could connect with either what you're doing or your businesses are doing or anything at facilities, whatever. So any particular contact methods or anything that or social media page. I don't know if you have those as well, but anything you want them to check out.
Well, the website's the big thing of MontgomeryTennisPlex.com. We are now currently, I think, one of the biggest junior facilities in the nation. We coach 700 kids a week. We have great adult programs also. And sincerely, our coaching staff has to be one of the top 4 or 5 coaching staffs in the United States. As far as knowledge, caring, anything you want to think about. We have tremendous coaches from both juniors and adults. So I'm very pleased with how we're coming along. I'm very pleased with what we can achieve, and the feedback that we get is just wonderful. So it's MontgomeryTennisPlex.com. We have 12 indoor courts. We have 4 outdoor courts, and we have I think 6 pickleball courts. Well, actually 10 pickleball courts, which is a whole different area that we got into. It's a beautiful place. So come out and visit us. Love to have you.
Cool. Yeah, I've been there. I've enjoyed it. Very nice facility. Hopefully I'll be back there soon. Maybe to get those serve lessons you were talking about. Yeah, exactly. And one final question that I love to ask my interviewees before we sign off is, and you've given us a lot of great, tips and pieces of advice, obviously, but what is one key tip that you can give our audience to help them improve their tennis games?
I would say just enjoy it. Okay, enjoy it and watch the professionals play. And then you're not going to play like the professionals. I mean, they're just physically incredible. You can always find. And let me just preface it. I never watch a tennis match ever. Well, I don't learn something, and I love it. And I watch it, and I listen to some of the commentators, Courier and Paul Anico, and a couple of the other guys who I think are just great, Brad Gilbert, and you learn so much by just watching and listening that you never thought about before. I mean, I listen to some of these guys, and I'm sitting there. Renenberg and I was two grands. We were watching a televised event, and Courier said something, and Richie and I just look at each other and go, "Huh, never thought of that."
Mm.
And so that's would be my advice. If you really want to be a player and really immerse yourself into it, it's fun, and you can pick out things visually, and you can pick out things audibly, and just play around with them.
Yeah. Definitely great advice there to cap it off. So we will have the Montgomery TennisPlex website in the show notes page, so you can click that and check it out. Definitely want to do that. So Jack, thanks a lot for coming on the show. Hope to see you again soon at Plex probably. And we'll talk soon, but thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jack. All right. I really hope that you enjoyed my interview with Coach Jack Schore. Jack, thanks for coming on to the show today. And if you found value from this episode, then I would really appreciate it if you would leave a review for the Tennis Files podcast. And you can do that by going to tennisfiles.com/Apple Podcasts or leaving a review on your favorite podcast app that you use to listen to the show. We just find that Apple Podcasts is the biggest driver of viewership for the show and, makes it the most visible and so forth. So would really appreciate a review for the show if you have not done that yet. I would also like to leave a you with a quote, as I do at the end of every show, and this one is by Peter Drucker. And Peter said, "We now accept the fact that learning is a lifelong process of keeping abreast of change, and the most pressing task is to teach people how to learn." I love that quote there by Peter. And with that, thanks so much for listening. We've got some really great interviews for you coming down the pike, so definitely stay tuned for that. And with that, thank you so much for listening. Keep improving your tennis game, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Tennis Files podcast. This is your host, Mehrbon Ranchad, signing out.